Yeah, we're back again about the Instagram algorithm. Some say it's the greatest mystery in humanity. Some say it's actually the second greatest, right behind the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto. People don't know it, but in 2009, I held 2,000 Bitcoin. I don't want to speak about it ever again. Anyway, what a lot of you guys maybe don't know is that throughout the past years, I've sort of made it my calling tracking algorithm changes, reading between the lines, and testing out what works and why it works. And recently, it seems like Instagram has started to step up their algorithm game and make some changes to how they actually recommend content. And if you don't jump on the wagon right now and maybe even change your strategy to go along with that, you're gonna miss out big time. You could be here right before quitting, like this student of mine, realize that it's actually sort of your own fault to not grow with the platform and change your strategy to get to this. Oh yes, without any of those crappy bullshit hacks. So let's talk about how to get your content recommended by the Instagram algorithm so that you never have to worry again. And by the way, I just released a free 1-hour training going into all of these things that we talk about here in this video a lot deeper. It's linked down below. But taking a look at the data that I've gathered in the past months, it seems like Instagram's algorithm mostly tracks 3 things that you need to be aware of: context, content view time, and interactions in their velocity. Let's just talk about the context part a little bit. And it seems like nobody really seems to care about this thing, and nobody really seems to talk about this thing. You probably already know that they have these image and video recognition algorithms crawling through every piece of content constantly, even weeks after you post, and they mostly do this to understand your content better, to understand who it actually is they should show it to in the feed, for example. And by far, your biggest job actually is to make their job easier by helping them, the Instagram algorithm, understand what's actually going on in your content. And there's multiple ways you can do that. First of all, hashtags. Maziri, the head of Instagram, has recently spoken out about it. We've made a video about it, but it is basically a fact by now that Instagram takes a look at your hashtags to get more context as opposed to give you more reach. And yes, I know people are just gonna say, well, Dominik,
I'm still growing with hashtags. They're bullshitos.
Yeah, of course, you still can get good reach with them, but chances are a lot lower than they were, let's say a year ago. And your time actually is definitely better spent in other areas, like creating content, getting your hook game strong, for example, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So when posting hashtags, not only try to describe what's in your post with the hashtags, also try to make its context a little bit clearer. We've done a video about this, linked somewhere down below, possibly in the first comment. We've done a video. Yeah, it's actually multiple people. For example, my evil twin brother that looks just like me, who's behind the camera right now, possibly threatening me with something right now that I just can't explicitly state right now. Now, there's obviously more things to give the algorithm a little bit more context about your content. For example, it's what your current followers and the people who do engage with your content genuinely engage with. And they sort of built a whole mesh with interest trees to try to predict who would be actually into that sort of content. And people who are, for example, in random engagement groups or buy likes and engagement have yet another issue coming from the Instagram algorithm, because it doesn't matter how little you boost your posts with these fake metrics and stuff like this, you're totally gonna confuse and mess up this mesh, totally confusing the shit out of the algorithm. So actually, yeah, it's not the algorithm's fault mostly, it's yours. The same thing actually applies to more seasoned creators as well, who've been on the platform and haven't really changed and grown with what their audience actually wants, or people who have switched up their content too much. Basically everything the same thing, the algorithm just doesn't know what's going on. You gotta imagine this whole thing like this. They first show your content to a very small subset of your audience, and based on how they react, tracking mostly our 3-part formula, the algorithm then decides who and how many people to push it out to, which is sort of a blessing and a curse at the same time, because some people say, some gurus actually say, always post your reels in your feed, or always post your reels in your stories. Well, if you have a very invested audience that really cares what you put out, of course post it in your feed, because you'll help the algorithm get the necessary metrics, the necessary context. Because if you have a real invested audience, these metrics are generally pretty good metrics, and then the algorithm just knows what to do with your content. If, however, you never really did some audience research and your current audience mostly consists of random people who are not that into you, and then you post your reels in your feed, for example, they're not really gonna react the way that they should. And they should ideally react pretty well in terms of the algorithm, because those are the people who follow you. So if there's a slight mismatch, the algorithm gets the context that your content isn't really that valuable to be pushed out to compete with all the other content out there that just performs way better. Sort of complicated, and it's actually still not everything about this whole context part, but if you remember, there's actually 2 more parts. And we sort of surface level scratched this one before, the second one. But let's go a little bit deeper into the content view time, because this whole part is actually pretty complicated, and in parts actually is very similar to the whole YouTube game. Now, if you're one of the newer people, content view time is basically the time spent on your content, and the longer you can hold them on the platform, the more you're valuable for Instagram, because they can then show more ads to them and so forth. Now, obviously the first step to holding them longer, and smart kids should already know what I want to talk about, is to catch them to begin with a hook. And a hook is actually not just the first few seconds of a reel. You need to have a hook in every piece of content that you make. And ideally, your content is structured in a way that people constantly want more. Sort of like a TV show. A very short TV show. And you really got to be paying close attention to how things are affecting your metrics. Switching up your hook in a certain way, or having a certain lingo in your posts, and basically any action that you take creating content will have a subsequent reaction from your audience. And it's actually your job to figure out what, first of all, and why it does it, on a micro level. Because short form content is short, yeah, obviously, and every split second really counts. Whether it's a video, a reel, or just a regular post. The issue with this whole thing, and this is a big issue to be honest, we don't have a lot of analytics to track any of these things. For example, like on YouTube, we have a ton of things. Instagram, not really, at least not yet. So paying attention to small things and details will actually pay off quite a bit if you're smart about it. Now, the third metric, or 3 and 4, the interaction velocity, we're not going to talk about it right now. We're going to make a whole nother video about this. But let me know in the comments down below what you think these metrics are really about. Smartest answer will get $50 through PayPal. Now, all theory aside, how can you actually put this into practice to grow your account? Well, I just dropped a brand new free Instagram growth and algorithm training where we go over these principles a lot deeper, along with some step-by-step examples you can follow to grow your Instagram in 2022 the real way. And if you're not interested, make sure to at least watch this video right here to make sure you don't make any of the mistakes that we talk about in this video, because they might actually destroy your account.